I have very little to add to what Tom very eloquently expressed. I would obviously like to add my thanks to all those that he listed, and to express also my particular appreciation once again to the Soprintendenza in Bologna for the loan of the Santa Cecilia, which is really one of the key pictures of the exhibition at a time which is, as you all know, extremely taxing for Emilia. Tom ends with the Madonna della Perla, the pearl of Philip IV's collection, a collection which, of course, contained a host of masterpieces, the painting perhaps that he liked most. And it's emblematic of the way in which the reputation of Raphael's late work fell in the later 19th and the 20th century, that even as recently as 1960, it was believed to be entirely by Giulio Romano. You still will find it illustrated in many books as Raphael and somebody, or Giulio Romano and somebody. And it was only in the early 1980s that the late Cecil Gould made a strong case for it being entirely by Raphael, to return it to the kind of position that it occupied in the 17th and 18th centuries. But it's a painting that we shouldn't confine ourselves, when we think about it, entirely to the question of authorship. For both Tom and for me, it is entirely by Raphael, and I think that is true of our colleagues in the Prado and the Louvre as well. But it's too easy, and to some extent we may have occasionally fallen into this trap. It's too easy to be occupied by essentially technical questions of divisions of hand, of patterns of execution, at the expense of the actual quality of the works of art. It's very frequent, I think, nowadays among professional art historians, academic art historians, among whom I am one, to think of everything about a picture, its patronage, its socio-political context, its theological context, everything about a picture except its actual human and spiritual quality, and its dangerous word, and its beauty. And I think that if we look carefully at this painting, we see an extraordinary level of intelligence, artistic intelligence, of spiritual awareness, and of inventiveness. It was something that always puzzled me for years, the direction of gaze of the child, who is not looking at St. John the Baptist, is not looking at his mother. In a painting which is very closely based on the Perla, the Madonna del Gatta by Giulio Romano, of probably a year or so later, now in Naples, in Capodimonte, the direction of the child's gaze is changed, actually to focus on what the gift that the Baptist brings. Sadly, and entirely understandably though, due to the fragility of that painting, it was not, it could not be lent to the exhibition. It's one of our deepest regrets. And Giulio's treatment is one that the psychological focus is one that is perfectly understandable. It's what one would expect. But Raphael has, in effect, broken the neatness of a psychologically focused composition by raising the child's gaze to the fall of light that comes from the upper left. Fall of light that hits the head of the Virgin, that hits the head of St. Anne, that just lights the back of the young St. John and plays around his hair. And it is a light that is filters really throughout the landscape in the background. It's a landscape which is more detailed, more specific, more peopled, more populous, more structured as well than any previous landscape of Raphael, and it demonstrates the thematic centre of the painting, which is natural, the fusion of natural and divine light. Because the Christ child is actually looking up to the light, he's looking up, in effect, to his Father. And it is this willingness towards the end of his life in Raphael to take bold new steps, to expand the range of his work, to expand the range of his interests, which makes him one of the most fascinating artists of all, I think, of the Renaissance period, but of all artists to study. Continual invention, continual testing of his ideas, continual, not progress as such, but continual efforts to enlarge his range, to adapt and adopt styles and techniques which might seem proper to other artists. Another image that Tom showed was the portrait of Baldassare Castiglione, Raphael's great friend, and I think one of the great friendship portraits in Western art. A picture which influenced Rubens. Rubens copied it, a picture which Rembrandt drew, and there are Rubensian and Rembrandtesque qualities incipiently in that painting. But if it were a painting that would not been traditionally attached to Raphael's name, a painting whose history we can trace fairly precisely, I think it's a painting that would have been very difficult to attribute to Raphael. It was probably painted in the same year as this, and it bears virtually no relation to it. It's a painting which, if it turned up in an attic, dirty, unframed, would probably be attributed to a Venetian artist, a contemporary of Titian. And Raphael, of course, has been looking at Venetian art to paint that, but he takes it beyond that. Raphael is an artist of the highest and most adventurous intellectual level, and he's also an artist of great spiritual and moral profundity. And it is these qualities that I think that struck me and that struck, I think, Tom as well when we saw the exhibition up. We have spent so much time worrying about precisely who did what in the Raphael workshop in trying to work out the career of Penny, who remains shadowy, and I'm sure that the audience will disagree with quite a number of the attributions and datings that we proposed. We disagree ourselves about certain issues. We have, I think, reconstructed Giulio more effectively, and he emerges as a greater artist even when he's working under the umbrella of Raphael than we had anticipated. But leaving aside all these technical and historical issues, what I think is striking about the exhibition is the sheer adventurousness, the boldness, the artistic courage, the moral and spiritual qualities that arise from the paintings. Raphael really is a universal artist as a painter as well as his other activities, and we hope that we have succeeded at least in evoking this effectively for the audience here and in the Louvre. Thank you.